call it bold and brash.
More like belongs in the trash.
Time for talking about a third rail topic. We're going to read and react to this article titled A Cold War Between the Sexes by Caroline Downey for National Review. And you gotta admit, this is a pretty funny graphic. No girls allowed. Would have been funnier if they replaced the I with the U and the S with a Z, like I've seen on something. I swear I've seen that somewhere, I just don't remember. But anyway, you see from here, you've got the dude bro here in that lone treehouse. Before we find out more about this Cold War between the sexes, be sure to give this video a like. Comment your thoughts on the growing divide between men and women. And subscribe for daily videos. At a recent college reunion, I rendezvoused with an old professor, a wise, classical liberal who inspired me to pursue a career in journalism. After inquiring about me and my class, he mentioned that he had just celebrated his 43rd wedding anniversary with his wife, who happens to be a Democrat. I thought, fat chance of that today. For my generation, Gen Z, reaching such a milestone is hard to fathom, in large part because of diverging politics of young men and women. In the past 25 years, the gender partisan gap has nearly doubled. Donald Trump turned a predictable rift into a gaping chasm. In the 18 to 29 cohort, he won 56% of men, but only 40% of women. Young men have gradually been ditching the Democrats for the past decade, but they really fled in the last year. A post-election Public Religion Research Institute survey reports, with 38% of Gen Z now more likely to identify as a Republican versus 20% of Gen Z women. And according to Tim Pool, this is all the younger Gen Z, like those who have just turned 18 and 2024 was their first presidential election. Now, the oldest of Gen Z would have been able to vote as early as 2016. Some of the younger ones, like those who graduated high school in 2017 or 18, they would have had their first election in 2020. Sorry, I just had to fix that. And now those who graduated in the 2020s, who went to school during the pandemic, are the ones who voted in 2024. And in 2028, depending on how they classify Gen Alpha, a lot of them keep it going back and forth between whether Gen Alpha starts in 2010 or 13. So technically, if Gen Alpha started in 2010, that means Gen Alpha is going to be able to vote in 2028. Yes, iPad kids are soon going to be able to vote. Let that sink in. Getting back to the article. The widening of the Gen Z partisan gender gap has coincided with the decline of marriage, which young men and women continue to postpone or forego altogether. The Institute for Family Studies reports that while 85% of 25-year-old women and 75% of 25-year-old men were married in 1967, just 20% and 23% respectively are married today. That is a very sharp decline from 67 to 2024. In almost 60 years, it went down to less than a quarter of less than a quarter of 25-year-old women. Less than a quarter of that. Well, less than a third of men, respectively. Also, it's kind of weird that the percent of women is now lower than the percent of men, whereas back in 67, it was a larger share of women compared to the share of men. What I'd really like to know is how many of the 15 and the 25% respectively of women and men are nuns slash monks slash priests, etc. And how many of them just never married. Getting back to the article. Unwed women without children have moved toward the Democrats for several years. Without marriage as a financial and emotional anchor, young women have started to view the state as a backup husband, as author Louis Paris has suggested. While young women develop more trust in government as a replacement for a spouse's support, young men grow more anti-establishment. Huh, that's interesting. I mean, as an unwed 28-year-old man, I respect the establishment, but I don't put it above criticism. Since the GOP victory in November, when young men turned out in droves for President Trump, Democrats have been scratching their heads over young men's disgust with their party. Tim Walz insists that he's the bro whisperer. On the campaign trail, videos featured Kamala Harris's running mate gallivanting in camo gear and clumsily handling a shot hole puncher during a pheasant hunt. Cringe pandering to young men that proved unpersuasive. Progressive whippersnapper and Democratic National Committee upstart David Hogg is duking it out with veteran strategists over whether the old or new guard connects better with the next generation. And he got fired from that recently. I think this article came out, yeah, the 12th. That was before David Hogg was kicked out of the Democrat Party. He lost his seat. And quite frankly, from what that article describes, the gallivanting in camo gear and clumsily handling the shot hole puncher, yeah, that sounds very cringe. Like he was trying to play up stereotypes of masculinity. Yeah, I can definitely say that's actually kind of insulting. I'm just going to leave it at that. Democratic heavyweights have poured $20 million into an effort called Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan for Sam to influence the male psyche through ad placements in video games. But when they're not conducting political reconnaissance on young men, treating them like a dissident group in need of reprogramming rather than voters capable of rationality, they're in denial. Perhaps they think the problem is not their failure to resonate with young men. It's that they haven't offered them enough theatrics. Walz's son says that young men voted for Trump for the entertainment and sports-like camaraderie, rather than for policy and a reprieve from cultural shaming. I mean, I can definitely see that as being part of it. Tim Pool said that a lot of them have seen feel like he was actually offering solutions. Whereas again, that whole pheasant hunt bit, it's kind of like an offensive stereotype. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to say that. But I will also say that, say what you will about Donald Trump, he's a pretty entertaining guy, I'm not gonna lie. Like the garbage truck. I'm sorry, that was just probably the most hilarious trolling I've ever seen in politics. I'm sorry. Okay, for those of you who haven't seen it, let me bring it up. Oh, what was the other thing that I thought was hilarious? That'll come back to me. Right now, it's the garbage truck that I want to talk about.
250 million people are not garbage. I can tell you who the real garbage is, but we won't say that. How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden. And Joe Biden should be ashamed of himself if he knows what he's even doing. And she should be ashamed because she shouldn't let him do it. She's the vice president, but I assume she's acting as the president. She should never have let that happen. Now, I love Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico loves me. I don't know anything about a comedian. I love Puerto Rico. Nobody's done more for Puerto Rico than me. I took care of them when they had the big hurricanes, and nobody gets along better with Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican people than me. They love me and I love them. I don't know anything about the comedian. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him. I heard he made a statement, but it was just a statement that he made. He's a comedian. What can I tell you? I know nothing about him. I don't know why he's there. You put comedians up, and I guess he went on earlier in the show. I don't know who he is.
Thank you, press. 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 Thank you, press.
Even my friend who explicitly said he doesn't agree with Trump's politics had to admit that was funny. Literally just getting in the garbage truck. Oh, I just remembered what else it was. The McDonald's bit. For those of you who might not know, he literally went to work at a McDonald's to troll Kamala Harris about her claiming to have worked at McDonald's. Look, I wasn't there, so I don't know. She could have worked at McDonald's for all I know. I guess there was some debate on whether that was actually true. So Trump decided to go and work there personally, and let's watch the clip. Yeah, it was in Pennsylvania. That one's a little too long. I want to find a quick one. Okay, here we go.
You never even touch it, huh? Wow, that's pretty good. Can I give it to these guys here? Thank you.
Want to do another one?
Yeah.
So go here.
Let's do it.
Hold it up there, good. And then you can hang that one right back over there. Thank you. And then we're going to grab our salt. And then just one dump. No movement. Good, good, good. Flip over.
Never touched by a human hand. Nice and clean. I love salt. Wait a minute, I spilled some. No, it's over the left shoulder. No. I mean, that's thousands of people. Hello, how are you? What a beautiful woman. Look at a beautiful child. It's like the perfect looking person. That's good. That's the compliments. Thank you, darling. Thank you. Hi, Mom. Look at Mom over there. Thank you very much. Thank you, darling. You have a great mom? Good or great? That's right. She knew what to say. Thank you very much. Thank you, darling. Wow, so nice.
Right, you're doing a good job.
Okay, these are nice people we're meeting, huh?
So you're here
Okay, got it. Larry, look at this guy. I'm not going to mess with him, huh?
How you doing,
You
sir?
look fantastic. Hello.
How you doing, boy?
How are you? Your new baby. How are
Good.
you?
Doing great.
Good. How are you? So this is compliments of me, okay?
All right.
You go have a good time. Don't eat too much, right?
will. Have a great day,
Thank
sir.
you, man. You take care. Thank you, honey. Have a good time. Thank you. It's cute. This is fun. I could do this all day. I wouldn't mind this job. I like this job. I think I might come back and do it again. Thank you. It's Kamala's birthday? She's 60 years old? Yes, I would say happy birthday, Kamala. She's turning 60.
Did you get a surprise?
I think I'll get her some flowers. Maybe I'll get her some fries. You're right, that might be. I'll give her some McDonald's. I'll get her a McDonald's hamburger. No, it is her birthday. That is true, right? Happy birthday, Kamala. Happy birthday. See you later. Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that was... See, I told you he's an entertaining guy. Like Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers says, it is kind of a popularity contest. But yeah, I suspect the point is, going back to the point from the article that Tim Walls' son pointed out. What did he say again? Yeah, the entertainment and sports-like camaraderie. And I'll also admit the cultural shaming bit. Yeah, some people are just tired of being accused of an original sin of some kind. That's what a lot of them would probably say. But yeah, let's get back to the article, because I think we took too much of a detour here, but it was worth it. I wanted you to actually see those bits. I'm sorry. Say what you will about his politics. You got to admit, that was very entertaining. Getting back to the article at long last, Democrats are determined to crack the code of young men. It's crucial for their electoral viability. But they got themselves into this mess by ostracizing young men as the problem. Most recently, the left has decried men's interest in eating red meat, fitness, and other self-improvement activities as fringe pursuits. But to discover the roots of the disdain, we must go back to the 1970s. Yeah, I know the red meat stuff comes from the, what is it? The carbon emissions. Though I will say that the health problems associated with red meat, I think it's more about the garbage version that fast food puts out. Like, apparently, steak and eggs is actually really healthy. It's what bodybuilders have, according to M from the 33 Secrets and other some other channels of his. That's one of those foods that boosts testosterone. But yeah, fitness, I actually thought was kind of apolitical. I mean, there are people I know who lean left who are into working out and such. I mean, that gets into a whole different topic about fat shaming and body positivity versus wide pride. Look, I'm just going to say it. We can all agree that being overweight is not healthy, as the people in my comments sections occasionally point out, which, hey, I'm not going to take offense to it. You want me to get my health up? I am going to do better. Currently, as I record this video, I am experimenting with smoothies replacing, what was it? Oh yeah, cheese cracker sandwiches and other artificial snacks like that. Though I'll admit there's some... I do have a deal for up to 4 boxes of Cheez-Its for $1.97 each. They're so tempting because that can get me 14 containers, 14 of these 16-ounce containers that I have. You know, maybe some point in the future I'll start bringing those back in as my evening snack, so that would cover weeks because, well, the smoothies I would still do in the morning and afternoon, unless I'm at the instant gratification job, in which case that's what the cheese cracker sandwiches are for, so that I can gulp them down quickly and move on with my day. But before we get back into too much more of a detour, let's find out the roots of the disdain. Speaking of the leftward lurch in economics, Milton Friedman once remarked, "We're all Keynesians now." For decades, the culture has said, "All feminists now." Though it started with suffrage, equal opportunity, and other advancements of women's rights, feminism lost the plot around the 1970s, when it told young men to repent for the sins of the patriarchy and then shelve themselves. By the mid-2010s, circa Me Too, mainstream feminism had developed into an indictment of toxic masculinity. Over time, young men began to believe that feminism's goal was not equality, but their displacement and punishment. Today, only 43% of Gen Z men identify as feminists, compared with 61% of Gen Z women, according to the Survey Center on American Life. Yeah, at a certain point, you can't just, if you beat down the, if you just insult other people too much, then you're going to lose a lot of support. Now, I'll admit I'm kind of harsh on people who drink, especially people who drink in the presence of children. I can afford to be selective because I'm not running for office. I don't care if someone decides they don't want to subscribe to me because they think I'm too harsh on the alcohol question. Again, I would definitely recommend against drinking it if asked directly, but I'm also not going to berate you too hard for it. I'm still not going to enable it. I'm still not going to allow it at events held in my name. That's just one example of how, yeah, I can be a little aggressive on that. Just like some feminists, not all, but some, can be a little too aggressive and resort to trying to drag men down instead of lifting women up. Not all of them, but a vocal amount. Personally, I don't I will not identify as a male feminist under any circumstances. Because if you've seen Deadpool and Wolverine, just look at Nicepool. He was the example of it being used performatively. So, let me just say, I am not against women being able to have jobs. I am not against women being able to vote. I think if you take on the responsibilities of participating in society, then you should have the right to have a say. Not in the same way that Bo Refik thinks that we should have the citizen soldiers where mandatory military service to create more of an investment in the well-being of the society compared to what we have right now. Not even the notion of the landowners being the only ones who can vote because they have the invested stake. They have an investment in that. Then there are others who think you should be married with kids before you can vote because you have a vested interest in the future, and also that should apparently make you be the only thing that determines whether you can or can't run for office. Personally, I think as it is, as long as you're paying taxes, I think you should have a say in what the laws are and what those tax dollars are going towards. Roads or otherwise. Yeah, I remember in middle school now, it was either my sixth grade social studies teacher or seventh grade geography teacher who said that even homeless people were allowed to vote by the late 2000s because they're a citizen and they live there now. I don't know how much of the homeless as a group actually vote. I learned in abnormal psychology class that the mentally ill collectively, they don't go out and vote. They just don't. Yeah, I'm starting to question how the homeless are able to do it without a mailing address. Because if you don't have a mailing address, then what jurisdiction are you able to vote in? It might be based on an older address if they registered before they went out in the streets. I don't know. Probably whatever's on their driver's license or state issued ID, assuming they have one. Okay, I've gone way too much of a tangent here. The point is, I think if you're a tax paying citizen who is an adult, you should have some kind of say. Finally, getting back to the article, over the years, colleges, awash in DEI and cancel culture, have become pressure cookers for young men. In 2024, young women out-enrolled young men in college by 2.4 million. Gender studies, which teaches that men have privilege to atone for, also known as original sin, has become a popular discipline in academia, especially among young women. President Obama's Title IX witch hunts against college sexual misconduct dismantled due process for young men and fueled their suspicion of women. Aaron Clary pointed out that they should have sent those kinds of accusations to the police. The college should have just forwarded it to the police and not had any kind of official review or such with amongst themselves, which I agree with. You know, if a crime is reported like that, it should go to the police, law enforcement, detectives, people whose job it is to investigate. And then, if they find something that's arrestable, then you have your day in court, and the courts figure it out, not the colleges. Well, at a certain point, if it reaches the point of arrested for or on trial for, I can understand suspending the student for that, especially because, well, if they have to appear in court, then they aren't exactly going to be able to appear in class. I'd save expulsion for a conviction. Like, you don't have to wait for exculpatory evidence to prove that he didn't do it, but they should really. But really, the process should be more of a, we're going to forward this to the police. You're suspended until further notice. If you get convicted, you will be expelled. If you get a not guilty, we're going to let you back in. Though at that point, maybe remote learning might be a necessary evil. Of course, that's assuming you would want to go back to that particular college at that point. But I digress. Okay, I'm sorry. I have to switch my monitor to LCD conditioning so that I'm gonna have to read the article off my MacBook directly. I apologize. Alright. You know what? I forgot where I left off on the article before I went off on that tangent. So let's get back. I'm just going to start from the top. President Obama's Title IX witch hunts against college sexual misconduct dismantled due process for young men and fueled their suspicion of women. While it was important to hold young men accountable for treating women like toys, that too often turned into falsely accusing them of SA. The ripple effects of the Me Too movement can be spotted today in bars across America, where young men no longer approach young women for a conversation, let alone try to court them. I also speak anecdotally as someone with a twin brother who is romantically jaded in a way our parents were not at his age. Men and women of older generations, even with their political registrations differed, were cut from a similar cloth and shared a mutual respect that's lost among today's young adults. According to Tim Pool, it is because they come from different communities now and their values don't always align. And for those of you who are wondering, the color shifts up here, like you can see on my face. It comes from my monitor's LCD conditioning. I'm sorry, but this monitor was acting up. You know what? I think I should just speedrun the rest of this article. For many young men, the disengagement from society started with negative experiences in K through 12 in pediatricians' offices. There, they're often judged against girls despite their different nervous systems, leading to overdiagnoses of ADHD and priming them for resentment. Therapy culture and medicine have pathologized young men for being themselves. Tired of being the permanent fall guys, young men craved the role models who legitimized their manhood. Cue Trump. Brash and bold. The correct line from SpongeBob is, they're bold and brash. Wait, I just realized a way to describe it. They wanted a role model who affirmed that they were also bald and brash, and not someone who thought, more like belongs in the trash. Q. Trump. Brash and bold, he was an archetype of audacity and success that many young men idolized. To be sure, Trump's arrival on the political scene polarized young men and women, with the gender gap passing 10 points in 2017, the year he took office. While many young men saw a mouthpiece for their struggles and a chance of socioeconomic redemption, many young women saw only a philanderer, misogynist, and bigot. But, as with working class anxiety and flyover country, Trump tapped into a discontent that Democrats had overlooked in a demographic they had long forsaken. The grievances of young men found an online home, spawning an entire content universe. For the past few years, the manosphere spectrum of both productive and sinister male digital spaces and personalities has given young men a refuge from scapegoating and shifted them rightward. On the destructive end, there's Andrew Tate and personalities who lobby against monogamy, belittle women, and frame marriage as a trap for young men. On the constructive side, there's Father Mike Schmitz, Jordan Peterson, and even personal finance guru Dave Ramsey, who urge men to be virtuous, responsible providers and protectors. Amid a Christian revival driven mainly by young men, a mini-religious manosphere for social conservatives has emerged as well. While there's an online corner for right-leaning young men, there's a zone for left-leaning young women. That is, all mainstream female-focused entertainment. From the sex podcast Call Her Daddy to Cosmopolitan magazine, most pop culture spaces for young women reinforce intersectionality and sex positivity. A few years ago, even the American Girl product line, known for its wholesome historical dolls and stories, introduced a book for young girls that included a transmission, pride flag, and a section promoting gender ideology. These are the symptoms of radical feminism, which most young women take for granted and scarcely challenge. But many young women, who report higher rates of anxiety and depression than young men, are in therapy, according to scientific papers published by the National Institutes of Health. While mental health problems are common among Gen Z generally, young women are more likely to receive treatment, according to the CDC. Feminist therapy, rising in popularity, emphasizes to female patients that men are irrelevant and not worth the trouble. Social media abounds with young women who lament that they're dating narcissists. As a Gen Z man who's in therapy, I wish to point out that sometimes not all therapists are like that. Mine's really cool. She has never given me a hard time for admitting to my dating preferences on the whole alcohol thing. She always reiterates that it's my boundary and I shouldn't compromise on that. She's also never even remotely implied that I'm toxic for expressing some degree of masculinity. So, not all therapists, but also I can kind of understand why men would be a little hesitant. Ultimately, I would argue that if you have something with a if you have an experience with a therapist you don't like, just find a new one. There was some reasonable concern about trying to find a find a fellow man who could be a therapist for me, like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. But I decided to give the first one I could find a chance, and so far it's working out. But yeah, the point is, not all therapists are like that. And I would argue that it's not all masculinity that's toxic, it's individual behaviors that are toxic. Some that are more prominent among men, some that are more prominent among women. It goes both ways. Back to the article. The sexual revolution was launched to liberate women from their reproductive nature and unlock greater sexual experiences for both genders, but it has made young men and women view each other as disposable. While young women instinctively crave commitment as the price of sex, modern feminism forfeited that by offering up sex on a silver platter, so long as there's consent. Departing from courtship, many young adults engage in non-committal hookup culture made possible by contraception and baby deletion. Modern feminism's crown jewels. There's no doubt about it. Crossing the sexual Rubicon corrupted the mating rituals of young people. It killed romance and chivalry and replaced them with dehumanizing habits. For those who are older, it can be difficult to understand the dire straits of the Gen Z dating scene. Young men have no incentive to be gentlemanly. The licentious culture does not require it, and it might be misconstrued as sexist anyway. That actually unlocked a memory for me. One time in college, I held the door open for your stereotypical leftist activist. She gave me a dirty look. Or I swear that she was giving me a dirty look. I don't want to attribute anything. I don't want to misattribute anything. Okay, the LCD conditioning is done. I apologize for you having to watch that lighting. But yeah, you get the idea. I got the dirty look from a stereotypical leftist activist for holding the door open for her, as I would for someone who happened to be walking close enough to that door anyway. So I have definitely seen gentlemanliness be misconstrued as sexist, even if she didn't directly say, "You were being sexist, you pig." But the look she gave me may as well have said all. Now, back to the article. A few years ago, my brother told me a story of how he struck up a conversation with a girl in a bar in New York City. After they exchanged numbers, he wished her well and said he'd be in touch. The girl proceeded to throw a fit because he wouldn't ask her to go home with him that night. A baffling scenario to anyone born before 1980. Wait, so she wanted to hook up with him? Well, hey, he made his decision to not invite her home that night. Which I can respect, you know? I'm not one of those prudes who thinks don't have sex until marriage, but I do think a stable relationship is Probably a better context for that, at the very least. Even a friends with benefits one, not only because the exclusivity reduces the risk of STIs, but also it ensures consistency. It ensures that you're both on the same page about something. Like, again, I'm not a wait till marriage prude, but I am more in favor of long-term committed relationship first. Or at least have a level of trust built. Any level of trust. Just some trust. Just like Percy in the movie No Hard Feelings. You know, he wanted to actually know Maddie, Jennifer Lawrence's character, before they did the deed. Go watch that movie. It's actually really great. But yeah, I am so glad that Gen Z is more like that for now. As far as I can tell. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. Forget I just said that. Let's get back to the article. Okay, the LCD conditioning didn't do as good a job as I hoped, but let's try and get this done. In 2022, a Twitter account went viral for the tweet, "Do married people watch Gen Z dating and feel like they caught the last chopper out of Nam? Dating for Gen Z is indeed like dancing in a minefield, where the last few of the traditionally minded, without war stories or baggage, try to find the other survivors. It's brutal to navigate this perverse sexual culture and the many souls broken by it. The majority learn the sad lingo that has come to characterize our nihilistic generation: situationship, ghosting, benching, zombieing, cookie jarring. I have an idea for what benching probably means, but I have not heard of zombieing or cookie jarring. That's new to me. Maybe that's the really young Gen Z, like probably those who are in college right now. Anyway, no, let's actually look up what these terms are. I have to know now. And I'm sorry I keep on going on so many tangents. All right, this from Google says, when someone who previously ghosted you suddenly resurfaces, often acting as if nothing ever happened. So if Mississippi ever contacted me, I would have to call that zombieing. All right, and let's look up cookie jarring. The practice of keeping someone as a backup option, a cookie in the jar, while actively pursuing other relationships. Yeah, there's already a phrase for that. It's called the rotation. Matt Cross from the 33 Secrets and other channels. He has a dating rotation. He has like 5 or 6 women he's dating at any given time. I mean, you let me know in the comments down below what you think of the practice of cookie jarring or having a rotation. Well, there's another word for that. It's called a harem. Although maybe cookie jarring is more for women because a harem is typically multiple women for a single man. Just like the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the women go for the top 20% of men, which I've heard is now the 90-10 or rule, or the 95-5 rule. And other content creators are saying that is the norm. That is something that's going on more now, where more women are willing to share the same man. They're saying it, not me. Anyway, finish the article at some point today. Yes, many young men and women have indulged in the libertine zeitgeist. On the campaign trail, Democratic content creators placed crude, get out the vote notes at basketball games, above urinals and in bars that essentially told Gen Z young men, "You are free to be reprobates under our regime." What's a reprobate? Okay, according to Google, unprincipled person. Trump gives girls the ick. Vote Harris. Get laid, one card read. Others said, Republicans want to ban OnlyFans. Search Project 2025 and your girlfriend isn't safe in Donald Trump's America. Baby deletion bans kill. Oh, wait, I just realized that wasn't actually showing the article. I'm sorry. So, this is everything I just read. These are all these are the things that the signs said. Personally, as an independent, I would not be against the banning of OnlyFans, or heavily moderating it, because here's the thing. It is going to ruin your life if you do it. Look at Bo DeMeo. For those of you who don't know, he was the showrunner of X-Men 97 for the first season until he was laid off. No, he was fired like a week before the show actually premiered. Because it turned out he had an OnlyFans. He was doing something, I don't know. And then it turned out that he had inserted a lot of thirst traps of his into the actual show. Go look up the whole Bo DeMeo lore if you want. But the reason that X-Men 97's second season might not come out until 2026 now is because they had to go through those second and third seasons to remove more thirst traps he put in there. I mean, I liked X-Men 97. I thought it was a really good show, especially compared to other Disney Plus slop. But I digress. Look up the Bo DeMeo lore if you like, or don't if you think it'll ruin the show for you. Just like one of my friends will not watch X-Men 97 now because of this. So, yeah, I'm not completely against banning OnlyFans. Back to the article, at long last. But it wasn't a compelling pitch to young men, since they aren't happy on Pleasure Island. They want meaning and purpose, someone to work and live for. Young women aren't happy either. Most of all, progressive women. Gen Z is far more likely to be single than any other generation. Young people are having less sex than their parents' and grandparents' generations did, according to the Association for Psychological Science. The sexual interactions they do share are often tainted by prawn, and its violent, degrading trends such as choking. Dating apps and other technology have exacerbated the loss of dignity and have destroyed the hope for mutual care among men and women. Dating apps have also told most men that they're not romantically viable. No, 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 no. This is what happens if you're not romantically viable. I'll admit, I had a lot of fun making that intro for the I Quit Dating Apps video. Actually, as I record this, I got a comment on my... I actually got a comment on that video saying that I should not be using dating apps because what I described for women or the women and I'm interested in aren't exactly the kind that would be on dating apps, or that dating apps are more likely to be used by party girls. I would argue not all of them are party girls, but yeah, I can also see the reasoning for that. Amid the chaos, some young men have become disciples of Andrew Tate, or have disengaged from dating. I'm no Andrew Tate disciple, but I have disengaged. At least for now. Young men overall are bitter and disillusioned, but Trump's re-election has put a pep in their step, probably because of the rollback of DEI and gender ideology in America's public and private institutions. Indeed, young men may be the group that is most optimistic of all Americans about the next 4 years. According to a CBS News poll earlier this year, 60% of voters said they felt generally optimistic about the new administration, but that figure rose to 67% among under 30s. Young women have doubled down on progressivism. As young men and women move further apart politically, it's not just the electoral math for both parties that becomes uncertain, but the creation of families and therefore, though this may sound grandiose, the continuation of our civilization. The right-wing activist and manosphere figure Charlie Kirk was once asked by a male student at a college event what to do about his girlfriends having opposite political beliefs. "Do not marry this girl," Kirk responded. "Build a life with someone where you have agreement on the macro issues." I agree with that. If you aren't on the same page about these kinds of things, then what's the point? Like, if you are going to raise kids, if you're going to have kids and raise them, you should be on the same page about everything before you conceive. Because if you as a man get her pregnant and then find out, she disagrees significantly with me about how to raise our kids. Uh-oh, I'm getting divorced and now I'm being raked through the coals known as divorce court. Uh-oh, now I have to pay $500 a month for the next 18 years. And I'll probably be on the hook for more for that kid because, well, the rising cost of living and all that, and the reason that most Gen Z men are stay-at-home sons. Okay, we are finally at the end. Let's just finish the article, and I will give my final thoughts. While Kirk is correct that interpolitical marriages, which might have worked among older generations, are going to be less successful now, he misses the fact that many young men don't have a choice. Many feel that their options are to compromise their values or be lonely forever. For them, finding a woman with a conservative worldview is increasingly like finding a needle in a haystack. And until the Gen Z gender gap, partisan gap is bridged, they'll be searching for a while longer yet. As a quip often attributed to Henry Kissinger, though he was probably not its originator, has it, nobody will ever win the battle of the sexes because there's just too much fraternizing with the enemy. It was a cynical quip, but it has turned out to be too optimistic. Yeah, when you have this kind of battle of the sexes, or yeah, when you have the battle of the sexes, here's the thing. There are still women who like men. There are still men who like women. There are still men like David de la Morenas of How to Beast who would prefer to be in a relationship because he enjoys the company of a woman. And of course, there are some compromises you have to make at some point. I'm not saying that you have to essentially find an opposite sex version of yourself to marry. I would say sharing certain values while disagreeing on superficial things is probably the lesser of two evils. Now, let's say you agree on all the superficial, lesser things, like you enjoy the same movies and shows, but then, oh, I want my kids to be homeschooled. But then your girlfriend or wife is like, I want them put through the public schools like I was. Yeah, if you have opposite views on that, do not have kids with each other. If you still want to have kids, but you don't want to compromise on that, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to break up. There's nothing else I can say or do. Unless one of you is able to change the other's mind. That's really all I can say. I don't know what else to tell you. Now, if... And then there's also the whole question of whether you want a wife who would be a stay-at-home mom, assuming that's economically feasible. Honestly, at a certain point, you're just going to have to move on and keep looking. Look, for the men watching this, you're not confined to... You do not have a biological clock to worry about. Even if the women in your age group... Even if you find one in your age group when you're both 35 who shares your values and is on the same page as you about that, it's still technically possible. It's just a little harder. You're not going to have as many. And it's going to be a geriatric pregnancy for her. Yeah, this is getting into some third rail topics here, but suffice it to say, compromise on what you can, decide on what you don't want to compromise on. I used ChatGPT to figure that out. I'm going to do another video in the future where I actually share this entire list that ChatGPT helped me come up with, where I figure out my non-negotiables, like the drinking, smoking, and drugs that I told you about, where it has to be a hard no on all three, or she is not romantically justifiable for me. But there is so much more behind that, where there are some things I can compromise on, some things I won't compromise on, and then some things I don't care about. I think it was in one of the videos I recorded before this that I haven't edited yet as I record this one, but I believe I said something about how I don't care about a potential girlfriend's weight as long as she is not someone who would be the subject of an episode of My 600-Pound Life. But I'm going to wrap it up here for the video. I have gone on way longer about this than I expected because I have quite a few things to say. Still more things I want to say, but I'm going to leave it here for this video because I don't like the idea of there being a Cold War between the sexes. I think we need to all learn to coexist with each other as best as possible, or respect each other's boundaries. And maybe we need to learn not to get into long-term committed relationships without knowing whether you would be on the same page as that. So I'm wrapping up this video before I go on another tangent. Please give it a like if you enjoyed this, or if you have any issues with anything I said, feel free to leave a dislike. Actually, it would be better if you leave me a comment letting me know just how wrong I am. If you want to go full Sam Wilson and be like, you've got to do better, Henry. You've got to step up. Feel free to let me know. Subscribe for daily videos. Not usually as long as this, but again, I had a lot to say. I'll see you soon.